Sarah Malik arrived at the Brooks Ranch early in the morning, long before the sun fully warmed the land. Her hands were slightly cold, and so was her confidence. It was her first official assignment alone as a licensed veterinarian. She had trained for years, worked under senior doctors, and spent countless hours studying animal injuries, but nothing felt as real as driving onto this ranch, where a large mare waited for her help. She kept reminding herself that she had worked hard to reach this point, but her heart still beat faster than normal. Daniel Brooks, the ranch owner, stood near the barn with his usual quiet posture. He was a man who rarely spoke more than needed. People in the nearby town often described him as someone who let his actions speak. He cared for his animals with a seriousness that made others respect him. But today, he looked worried. His mare, Daisy, had been limping badly since dawn. When Sarah stepped out of her vehicle, she tried to look calm and professional. She had practiced that look in the mirror several times, though she wasn't sure if it actually worked. Daniel nodded once to greet her, then guided her to the mare. Daisy stood trembling near the fence, her back leg lifted in pain. She was a gentle animal who rarely gave trouble, which made her reaction even more alarming. Daniel tried to lift Daisy's injured leg again to show where she was hurt, but the mare jerked back, snorting and panicking. To Sarah, it looked too risky. She thought Daniel was applying too much pressure without realizing it. Fear for the horse pushed her to speak before her mind caught up. "Don't be rough, please," she said louder than she intended. Her voice carried across the paddock, and everything fell silent. Daisy stopped moving. Even the wind seemed to pause. Daniel slowly lowered the horse's leg and stepped back, not offended, but confused at her sudden burst of emotion. He stared at her, trying to understand why she thought he was being rough. His hands were gentle, his movements slow. He wasn't the type to force an injured animal. Sarah instantly felt her face warming. It wasn't embarrassment alone, it was the sudden awareness that she had spoken too quickly, too emotionally. She opened her mouth to explain, but before she could, Daniel pointed at Daisy's leg. His expression changed. Something was wrong. Something he hadn't seen clearly until now. Sarah stepped closer, her veterinarian instincts taking over. She crouched beside the mare, touching the leg carefully. Daisy flinched, but not violently. Sarah whispered to her, comforting her in a soft, steady tone. The mare recognized the gentleness and slowly eased her tension. Sarah traced the leg from knee to hoof and felt the abnormal shape beneath the skin. The bone wasn't just bruised, it felt twisted. This wasn't a simple accident. Daniel watched quietly, waiting for her conclusion. When Sarah finally stood up, her face showed concern. "This injury didn't happen from running around the paddock," she said softly. Something forced her to make a sudden, extreme movement. Something that scared her badly. Daniel's jaw tightened. He gestured for Sarah to follow him. He led her to the far side of the fence, near the shadowed edge of the trees. He pointed at the wooden post. Sarah leaned closer and felt a chill run through her body. Deep scratch marks ran down the wood, long and uneven. They weren't from a small animal. They were too wide, too heavy. "These weren't here yesterday," Daniel said in his calm voice, though worry hid beneath the surface. Sarah touched the marks with her gloved hand. They were fresh. The wood fibers were still bright beneath the outer layer. She slowly stood up and looked around the area. The ground had unusual impressions, large paw-like shapes pressed deep into the earth. Her earlier misunderstanding with Daniel faded away completely. This wasn't about her or him. This was about the mare, and now about something else altogether. Something had come onto the ranch during the night or early morning. Something big enough to frighten Daisy into hurting herself. Sarah took a moment to breathe. She was no wildlife expert, but she understood patterns. Large tracks, claw marks, and a panicked horse all pointed in the same direction, some kind of wild predator. The winter season often pushed animals out of their usual territory, especially if food was scarce. A young, hungry mountain lion was not impossible. She looked at Daniel, who was still studying the ground quietly. "Did you hear anything last night?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not much. The wind was strong, but Daisy was restless at sunrise." Sarah looked at the tracks again, trying to record every detail in her mind. The ground told a story. A frightened horse backed into the fence, claw marks on the wood, and heavy steps approaching and pulling away. The attacker must have been close, too close. She pulled out her phone to take pictures. "I'm going to send these to wildlife control," she said. "If there's a mountain lion wandering this area, they need to know." Daniel nodded slowly. She could see the tension in his eyes, not fear for himself, but worry for the animals he swore to protect. Sarah felt a small shift inside her. She had judged him too quickly earlier. He wasn't rough at all. He was simply trying to help his animal without making her suffer. They returned to Daisy, who still stood nervously. Sarah spoke to her gently while examining the leg again. Daniel stayed silent but attentive, watching her methods with a growing respect. For someone who arrived nervous, Sarah's hands moved with confidence. She knew how to calm an animal, how to understand pain signals, how to move without increasing fear. After a while, Daisy lowered her head against Sarah's shoulder, a small but important sign of trust. Sarah smiled softly and kept working. She explained everything she did so Daniel could understand the injury better. At first, he only listened quietly, but soon he began asking questions, practical, careful questions that showed he was truly invested. The misunderstanding that morning began to fade completely. After assessing the leg, Sarah concluded that Daisy would need rest, bandaging, and supportive care for at least several weeks. She prepared the materials from her bag and began wrapping the leg carefully. Daniel stood beside her, handing her whatever she needed without her even asking. They worked like a team, even though they had known each other for less than an hour. When the treatment was complete, Sarah stood up and stretched her back. Daniel looked at Daisy and gently stroked her neck. The mare leaned into his touch, showing she felt safe again. Sarah finally said the words she had been meaning to say for a while. "I'm sorry about earlier. I didn't mean to sound like I was accusing you." Daniel looked at her, and for a moment, the tension completely melted. He wasn't angry. He had simply not understood her sudden fear. "You don't have to apologize," he said quietly. "You were only trying to protect her." His words were simple, but they carried kindness. The cold morning air felt a little warmer after that. Sarah walked with him along the fence again, discussing the best way to secure the area until wildlife officers came. Daniel listened carefully, and she noticed something new in his behavior. A slight openness, a willingness to trust her judgment. She hadn't expected him to rely on her this quickly. Their conversation became smoother, easier. They talked about the ranch, the animals, and the winter season. Sarah learned that Daniel rarely left the ranch because he felt responsible for everything living on it. And Daniel learned that Sarah had chosen veterinary work because animals had always been her comfort since childhood. By the time they finished planning, the sun had moved higher in the sky. But instead of leaving right away, Sarah stayed a little longer to watch Daisy calm down and eat hay again. Daniel stayed too, standing beside her, showing her where the mare liked to be touched behind the ears. It no longer felt like a first meeting filled with awkwardness. It felt like the beginning of cooperation, maybe even something more in the future. As she finally prepared to leave, Sarah glanced once more at the claw marks on the fence. She remembered the moment she had blurted out, "Don't be rough, please." She couldn't help but smile at how completely she had misread Daniel at first. But if that misunderstanding had never happened, maybe they wouldn't have communicated so honestly afterward. Daniel watched her get into her vehicle, giving her a small nod. Not a goodbye, just a quiet understanding that she would return soon to check on Daisy. And as she drove away from the ranch, she did not feel nervous anymore. She felt connected to her work, to the mare she had helped, and strangely, to the quiet rancher who had surprised her more than once that morning. Sarah returned to the Brooks Ranch the next morning, her mind still thinking about Daisy and the strange claw marks she had seen the day before. She had spent the night reviewing photos, notes, and even maps of the area near the ranch. Something didn't feel right. The scratches and tracks were too large to be ordinary wildlife, yet she knew mountain lions, bears, and coyotes sometimes wandered close to ranches in winter when food was scarce. She hoped she wasn't overreacting, but the mare's injury told a different story. She had to be sure. Daniel was already outside when she drove through the gate, tending to the morning chores. The frost on the grass glimmered in the soft sunlight, and the cold air smelled fresh with pine and earth. Daniel looked up and nodded as Sarah approached. Today, he didn't speak much, letting her settle first. She liked that about him. He didn't rush anyone, not even himself. "Good morning," Sarah said, stepping out of her car with her medical bag. "How's Daisy?" "She's resting," Daniel replied. "Still limping, but she ate and drank." "I think your treatment helped her settle last night." Sarah smiled. "I'm glad. I want to examine her again and make sure the leg isn't swollen or infected. Then we can plan her full recovery." Daniel followed her to the paddock where Daisy stood quietly, munching hay. The mare seemed calmer today, but Sarah could see the tension still in her muscles. She knelt beside Daisy and carefully lifted the injured leg. Daisy flinched slightly but didn't try to kick or pull away. Sarah applied gentle pressure to check for swelling or tenderness. "It's less swollen than yesterday," Sarah said softly, "but the twist is still there. She needs continued rest. Any sudden movement could make it worse." Daniel nodded. "I'll make sure she doesn't get spooked." He had a gentle touch as he stroked her mane, and Daisy leaned into him. Sarah noticed the connection between the rancher and his animals. He didn't just own them, he understood them. After examining Daisy, Sarah and Daniel walked along the edge of the paddock to inspect the tracks and claw marks again. Sarah pointed to the marks on the wooden post. "These are fresh," she said. "Someone or something was close to the fence last night. Look at the depth. Whoever did this was strong, and the mare got scared because of it." Daniel squinted at the scratches, running a hand over them. "I've never seen anything this big in the area. Coyotes, raccoons, even a bobcat wouldn't make marks like this." Sarah nodded. "I think it was a mountain lion, or a young one. That would explain the size, and it's possible it got too close because food is scarce." Daniel's expression turned serious. "Do you think it's dangerous for other animals, or for people?" Sarah hesitated. "Mountain lions are usually cautious around humans, but if they're hungry, or if something chases them onto a property, they can be unpredictable. It's rare, but it's better to be safe." Daniel ran his hand down his face. He had faced wild animals before on the ranch, but this was different. The injury to Daisy was proof. He had to protect the ranch, but he also had to keep the animals calm. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed him the photos she had taken last night. "I'm going to send these to wildlife control. They can check the area and make sure the animal doesn't come too close again. They might also relocate it if needed." Daniel nodded slowly. "That sounds wise. I just hope it's not too late for Daisy or the other animals." Sarah assured him that Daisy would recover with rest and care. Then she suggested they check the rest of the paddock for any other signs. As they walked along the fence line, Sarah noticed more tracks leading toward the tree line. The footprints were deep, and the claw marks in the mud were fresh. She knelt down to measure them carefully. "Definitely a young mountain lion," she said, noting the size and depth. "It's probably new to the area and trying to find food. That explains the panic in the mare." Daniel looked at the tracks. "If it's new, it might be hungry and desperate. We'll need to keep all the animals in tonight and watch closely." Sarah agreed. She admired how seriously Daniel took his responsibility. He didn't just care about profit or tradition. He cared about the living beings on his land. They walked back toward the barn, discussing plans to secure the animals. Sarah suggested they reinforce the fence along the tree line and set up extra lighting to deter predators. Daniel listened carefully, asking practical questions about what animals were sensitive to, what might frighten them further, and how to keep Daisy safe. As they worked together, Sarah realized something important. She had judged Daniel incorrectly yesterday. Her words, "Don't be rough, please," had come from fear and nervousness, not observation. Daniel had been patient and careful with Daisy. He understood animals. Her quick judgment had been wrong, but it had led them to communicate honestly and work closely together. By late morning, the preparations were complete. Extra fencing had been reinforced, and lights had been installed near the barn and paddock. Daniel checked each animal, while Sarah explained how to observe behavior signs for stress or injury. Then Daniel paused, his eyes narrowing slightly as he looked toward the tree line. "I saw movement earlier," he said quietly. "Something was watching us from the edge of the forest." Sarah's heart skipped. "Do you think it's the same mountain lion?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Possibly. It didn't move far. It's cautious. But we need to be careful until we're sure it's gone." Sarah suggested they stay near the barn for a while and observe. Daniel agreed. They brought Daisy closer to the barn, letting her rest in the smaller paddock with hay and water. Sarah checked her leg again, making sure the bandages were secure but not too tight. "You're doing great," Daniel said quietly, noticing how carefully she worked. Sarah smiled, feeling encouraged. "Thank you. It's my first big assignment alone, and I was nervous yesterday, but you made it easier to work with Daisy." Daniel nodded. "We make a good team. Animals can sense that. They feel when humans trust each other." They spent the afternoon keeping watch. Sarah explained how mountain lions behave, what signs to look for, and how to protect themselves if needed. Daniel listened intently, asking questions and sharing his experience of living on the ranch for years. Around late afternoon, the wind picked up. The trees swayed, and Sarah shivered slightly. Daniel noticed and brought her a blanket. "It's colder than usual," he said. "Keep warm. We'll stay out here together until dark." Sarah accepted the blanket, feeling grateful. She hadn't expected such thoughtfulness from a stranger yesterday. But now, with the shared concern for Daisy and the other animals, a quiet partnership was forming. As the sun dipped lower, they noticed movement near the tree line again. Shadows shifted, and the branches rustled unnaturally. Daniel whispered, "Stay close to me. Don't make sudden movements." Sarah nodded. Her heart pounded, but she remained calm. She had faced animals before, but being this close to a potentially dangerous predator was new. A low growl sounded from the shadows, and Sarah held her breath. Daniel kept his flashlight steady, shining the beam toward the movement. It was a young mountain lion, thin and cautious. Its movements were deliberate, alert, and hungry. Sarah watched silently as Daniel stepped slightly in front of her, his presence alone exuding calm authority. "Easy," he whispered. "We don't want to scare it too much." The mountain lion paused, sniffing the air. Sarah could see the tension in its body. It wasn't attacking, just assessing. She whispered softly, "It's okay. We just want you to leave. Don't hurt anything here." The predator's ears twitched, its tail swishing. It took a careful step backward, then another, until finally it melted into the shadows of the forest. Both Sarah and Daniel exhaled slowly, relief washing over them. "You handled that well," Daniel said quietly. "You stayed calm. Most people would panic." Sarah smiled weakly. "I couldn't have done it without you. You knew exactly what to do." Daniel nodded. "We learned together." That's how it works on a ranch. Animals, nature, they teach you to adapt quickly. A.T. They stayed near the barn for a little longer, making sure no other movement occurred. The night was quiet, and the stars began to shine above. Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment and respect for Daniel. Their initial misunderstanding had transformed into trust, teamwork, and a quiet admiration for each other's skill and care. By the time they finally returned inside the barn, Daisy had settled comfortably. Sarah checked her once more and smiled. She'll recover, slowly but surely. Daniel nodded, looking at the mare with pride. I just followed your lead. You knew what to do. Sarah packed her bag, ready to leave but pausing at the doorway. I'll come back tomorrow to check on her again. We need to make sure she's healing properly. Daniel smiled faintly. I'll be here. She'll be fine with both of us watching. Sarah stepped outside into the cool evening, feeling the ranch settle into quiet once more. The forest remained dark, the danger gone for now. But a new bond had formed between a young veterinarian and a seasoned rancher. Both had faced fear, uncertainty, and tension together, and come through stronger for it. As she drove away, Sarah reflected on the day. The mountain lion had been a threat. Daisy's injury had been serious, but the real story had been the growth of trust and understanding. One day, she realized, this ranch could feel like home, not just a job, and the man who once shocked her with his calm reaction would now be someone she could rely on for the animals, and perhaps in time, for herself. The night had settled over the Brooks Ranch like a heavy blanket. The barn lights glowed warmly, casting long shadows over the paddock, and the crisp winter air carried the faint scent of pine and hay. Sarah Malik stayed close to the barn, her bag of veterinary supplies beside her, while Daniel Brooks checked the fences and peered into the darkness beyond the tree line. Both knew the mountain lion might return, and neither wanted to take chances. Sarah had always loved working with animals, but this was different. She was now confronting a predator in the wild, one that could endanger both livestock and humans if it came too close. Her training gave her confidence, but nothing could erase the natural rush of fear and adrenaline that filled her chest as she stood beside Daniel. Daniel, on the other hand, moved with quiet authority. Every step he took was deliberate, measured. He was alert but calm, an unspoken reassurance to Sarah that she was safe as long as she stayed near him. The night had changed the way she saw him. Yesterday, she had misjudged him. Today, she saw the strength behind his quiet exterior. He understood the land, the animals, and the delicate balance between humans and wildlife. As they settled near the barn, Sarah noticed Daisy resting on the soft straw inside. The mare was calmer than before, though she occasionally lifted her head to listen to the sounds outside. Sarah knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hay from her muzzle. "You're safe now," she whispered. "We'll keep you that way." Daniel joined her, his gaze moving between the trees and the mare. "We need to watch until we're sure nothing else is around. Even if the mountain lion is gone, other animals could be nearby." Sarah nodded. "I agree. I'd rather stay alert tonight than risk another incident." Hours passed slowly. The ranch was mostly silent except for the occasional rustle of wind through the trees and the faint sounds of distant wildlife. Sarah and Daniel talked quietly, sharing stories about their pasts to pass the time. Sarah explained how she had always wanted to be a veterinarian, how caring for animals was more than just a job, it was a calling. Daniel, in return, spoke about growing up on the ranch, learning to ride horses before he could even walk properly, and understanding every creature that lived there. Their conversation flowed easily, building a sense of trust. Sarah found herself relaxing slightly, though her eyes constantly scanned the darkness for any sign of movement. Daniel noticed this and offered her a thermos of hot tea. "Keep warm," he said simply. You'll need it if we stay out here all night. She accepted it gratefully, savoring the warmth as it spread through her fingers. Thank you, she said. I'm glad you're here. It makes all the difference having someone experienced by my side. Daniel nodded, glancing toward the forest. We make a good team, he said. Animals sense that too. They can tell when humans work together instead of panicking. Sarah smiled. The thought made her feel more confident. She had come here to care for a horse, but she realized tonight was about more than just Daisy. It was about teamwork, trust, and facing challenges together. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl echoed from the tree line. Sarah froze, her heart skipping a beat. Daniel's hand instinctively went to his belt, where he kept a flashlight. He flicked it on and shone the beam toward the sound. 2 glowing eyes reflected the light back at them. A mountain lion had returned. It moved cautiously, keeping to the shadows, its body tense and alert. Sarah's stomach tightened, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had to focus. Panicking would only make things worse. Daniel whispered, "Stay close. Don't move suddenly." Sarah nodded, standing still beside him. The mountain lion took a step forward, then paused, sniffing the air. It was clearly hungry, but it was not attacking. Daniel and Sarah made themselves appear larger, their presence deliberate and calm. The animal hesitated, circling slowly, assessing the situation. Sarah whispered softly, "We don't want to hurt you. Just leave. There's no need for conflict." The mountain lion's ears twitched, its tail swishing, but it did not advance further. Daniel shone the flashlight steadily, keeping it focused on the animal without startling it. Slowly, carefully, the predator backed away into the darkness of the trees. Both Sarah and Daniel exhaled deeply, relief washing over them. For a few moments, they simply stood there, letting the quiet of the night return. Sarah's hands shook slightly from adrenaline. Daniel noticed but did not comment. Instead, he offered her a reassuring glance. "You handled that well," he said quietly. "You stayed calm. Most people would have panicked." Sarah smiled weakly. "I couldn't have done it without you. You knew exactly what to do." Daniel nodded. "We learned together. That's how it works on a ranch. You adapt quickly, or you fail. There's no other choice." They spent the next hour walking around the barn and paddock, checking for signs of any other predators. Sarah noted every detail, taking photos and recording observations to send to wildlife control. Daniel helped, moving quietly, always alert, but never alarmed. Together, they secured the animals, ensuring that Daisy and the others were safe for the night. As they returned to the barn, the wind had picked up again. Sarah shivered slightly, and Daniel noticed immediately. He handed her a warm blanket. "Keep this around your shoulders," he said. "You'll need it if the wind gets stronger." Sarah wrapped the blanket around her, feeling the warmth seep through. She glanced at Daniel and realized how much she trusted him now. Yesterday, she had misjudged him completely. Today, she saw his strength, his experience, and his unwavering care for the animals. They spent the rest of the night in the barn, keeping watch over Daisy and the other livestock. Sarah checked the mare periodically, ensuring the leg was not swollen or overly sensitive. Daniel kept an eye on the tree line, listening for any sounds that might signal another predator. They spoke quietly, sharing more about their lives, their challenges, and their dreams. Sarah found herself enjoying the conversation. The tension of the earlier hours had eased, replaced by a growing respect and understanding between them. She realized that their shared concern for the animals had created a bond, one built on trust, teamwork, and mutual respect. By midnight, the forest had quieted. No more growls. No more glowing eyes in the shadows. The mountain lion had retreated, and the night was calm. Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment. They had protected the animals, stayed safe, and learned from each other in the process. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low but steady. You did well tonight. You remained calm when it mattered most. That's something not everyone can do. Ender. 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 79. Ender. Sarah smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the blanket. Thank you. You were incredible too. I learned a lot, just watching how you handled the situation. Daniel nodded. Experience helps, but you have instinct and courage. That counts more than most people realize. They sat in the barn for a few more moments, listening to the soft sounds of the animals settling. Daisy had laid down, chewing hay calmly, and the other horses and cows were quiet as well. Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The night had been long, tense, and exhausting, but it had also been rewarding. As the first hints of dawn began to light the horizon, Sarah packed her bag and prepared to leave. Daniel walked with her to the gate, checking once more that all the animals were safe. I'll come back tomorrow to check on Daisy again, Sarah said. She needs continued care, and I want to make sure the leg heals properly. Daniel nodded. I'll be here. Don't worry. She'll be fine under our watch. Sarah smiled, feeling a sense of peace. The mountain lion was gone for now. Daisy was secure, and the night had forged a bond of trust and teamwork between her and Daniel. As she drove away from the ranch, Sarah thought about how the events of the night had changed everything. What began as a simple visit to treat an injured horse had turned into an experience of courage, learning, and connection. Daniel had surprised her with his calm authority, and she had surprised herself with her ability to remain composed under pressure. The night had tested them both, but it had also brought them closer. Two people brought together by circumstance, trust, and a shared commitment to the animals they cared for. And Sarah knew, as she watched the ranch fade in the rearview mirror, that this was only the beginning of something meaningful. For now, the mountain lion was gone, Daisy was resting, and the Brooks Ranch was safe. But more importantly, Sarah and Daniel had learned that facing challenges together could turn fear into respect, and respect into trust. And in the quiet aftermath of the night, they both understood that the bonds formed in moments of tension often lasted far longer than the danger itself. The next morning, the Brooks Ranch was bathed in the soft golden light of sunrise. Frost still clung to the grass, glinting like tiny crystals, and the air smelled of hay, earth, and pine. Sarah Malik arrived early, her bag packed with supplies, eager to check on Daisy. She had spent the night thinking about the events of the previous day, the mountain lion, Daisy's injury, and how much she had learned from Daniel Brooks. It had been an exhausting experience, but it had also been rewarding. Daniel was already outside, moving quietly among the animals, checking fences, and ensuring that all was secure. When he saw Sarah's vehicle appear through the gate, he gave her a small nod. She waved back, stepping out into the crisp morning air. "Good morning," Sarah called, her breath visible in the cold. "Morning," Daniel replied. His voice was calm, but there was a sense of relief in his expression. The night had been long, and he had barely slept, keeping watch to make sure no other predators came close. They walked together toward the paddock where Daisy stood, her coat gleaming in the early light. The mare had spent the night resting, and though her leg was still bandaged, she seemed calmer than the day before. Sarah knelt beside her, brushing a stray strand of hay from her muzzle. "You're looking better," Sarah whispered, her voice soft. "The rest is helping, and we'll make sure you continue to heal properly." Daniel stood nearby, watching carefully. He had learned a lot from Sarah in just 2 days. He admired her patience, her knowledge, and the way she handled animals with quiet confidence. He had also learned to trust her judgment completely, a rare thing for someone who had spent so many years relying only on himself and his own instincts. Sarah examined Daisy's leg closely. She checked for swelling, tenderness, and any signs of infection. The mare flinched slightly, but did not pull away. Sarah smiled softly. She's doing very well. With continued care, this leg should heal completely. No need to rush, just patience and proper support. Daniel nodded. I'll make sure she doesn't overexert herself. I've already instructed the others to keep her calm and safe. Sarah appreciated his thoroughness. It was clear that he cared deeply for all the animals on the ranch, not just Daisy. He had a way of understanding their moods, their fears, and their needs. Sarah had spent years studying animals, but she realized that Daniel had a lifetime of experience that no classroom could teach. After examining Daisy, they walked along the fence line again, reviewing the area where the mountain lion had been seen. Sarah took photos and notes to send to wildlife control. She wanted to ensure that the animal could be safely relocated and that the ranch would remain protected. Daniel observed quietly, listening to her suggestions and asking practical questions about the best ways to prevent future encounters. He seemed genuinely interested in learning from her, even though he had faced wild animals many times before. Sarah appreciated his openness. It was rare to find someone willing to combine experience with new knowledge. As the morning progressed, Sarah and Daniel continued to work together. They reinforced the fences further, moved feed and water away from the tree line, and made sure that Daisy's area was completely secure. All the while, they spoke quietly, sharing stories about their lives, their challenges, and their experiences with animals. Sarah learned more about Daniel's life on the ranch. He had grown up there, learning to ride horses and care for livestock from a very young age. He had a deep respect for the land and all its creatures. He told her about winters when food was scarce, storms that damaged fences, and predators that sometimes came too close. Sarah listened intently, fascinated by his knowledge and dedication. In turn, Daniel learned more about Sarah. She shared stories of her childhood, her love for animals, and the reasons she had chosen to become a veterinarian. She spoke about the satisfaction of helping animals, the challenges of treating injuries, and the importance of patience and observation. Daniel admired her passion and determination, and he realized that she was someone he could trust completely. By midday, they had completed their inspection and ensured that all the animals were safe. Daisy was resting comfortably, and the other livestock were calm and secure. Sarah packed her supplies, preparing to leave for the day, but she paused before stepping into her car. I'll come back tomorrow to check on Daisy again, she said. We need to make sure the healing continues properly, and I want to see that she's comfortable. Daniel nodded. I'll be here. She'll be fine under our watch. And thank you, Sarah. Your care has made all the difference. Sarah smiled, feeling a sense of warmth and satisfaction. It's my pleasure. I'm glad I could help. Before she drove away, Daniel walked her to her car. They stood in silence for a moment, looking at the paddock and the animals. The morning sun bathed the ranch in a golden light, and the frost sparkled on the grass. It was a peaceful, beautiful scene, a stark contrast to the tension and fear of the previous night. You did well, you know, Daniel said quietly. Not just with Daisy, but with everything. You stayed calm, patient, and focused. That's rare. Sarah felt her cheeks warm. Thank you. I couldn't have done it without your guidance and experience. You handled the situation perfectly last night. Daniel nodded. We make a good team. Animals sense that, and people do too. Trust and cooperation make all the difference. Sarah smiled again, feeling a sense of connection that went beyond the professional. They had faced fear together, protected the animals, and learned from each other. There was a mutual respect and understanding that had formed over the past 2 days, and it felt natural, comfortable, and reassuring. As she started her car, Daniel gave her one last nod. Drive safe. We'll see you tomorrow. And Levin. I will, Sarah replied, feeling a sense of peace and purpose. She watched the ranch fade in the rearview mirror, thinking about the events of the past 2 days. The mountain lion had been a threat. Daisy's injury had been serious, but the real story had been the growth of trust, teamwork, and understanding. Driving back toward town, Sarah reflected on how much she had learned. She realized that treating animals was not just about knowledge or skill. It was also about patience, observation, and empathy. And sometimes, it was about working with people who shared that same dedication. Daniel, standing at the gate of the ranch as she drove away, felt a similar sense of reflection. He had been used to working alone, relying on his experience and instincts. But working with Sarah had been different. She had brought knowledge, fresh ideas, and a calm determination that complemented his own skills. Together, they had faced a challenge and come through stronger. Over the next few days, Sarah returned to the ranch regularly. Each visit allowed her to check on Daisy's progress, provide additional care, and observe the other animals. She and Daniel continued to work closely, reinforcing fences, monitoring behavior, and ensuring the ranch remained safe. With each visit, their trust and friendship deepened. They communicated easily, anticipating each other's actions, and learning from one another. The initial misunderstanding the moment when Sarah had spoken out of fear was now a distant memory. Instead, there was mutual respect, cooperation, and an unspoken bond that had grown stronger with every challenge they faced together. Daisy's leg continued to heal, and her confidence returned gradually. She began to walk with more ease, her steps more sure, and her movements more relaxed. Sarah and Daniel watched her progress with satisfaction. The mare's recovery was a testament to their care, teamwork, and attention to detail. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip low in the sky, Sarah and Daniel walked along the fence line, inspecting the area once more. The winter air was crisp, and the sky was painted with shades of orange and pink. The mountain lion had not returned, and the ranch was calm and secure. "You did amazing work with Daisy," Daniel said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. "I've seen many animals recover under my care, but you have a special way with them. You see more than just the injury. You see their fear, their pain, and their needs." Sarah smiled, feeling a sense of pride and humility. "Thank you, Daniel. That means a lot. And you taught me so much too. I've learned more about ranch life, animal behavior, and patience than I could have imagined." They stood together for a moment, looking at the ranch, the animals, and the peaceful landscape. It was a rare moment of calm and satisfaction after days of tension, fear, and hard work. Sarah realized that the ranch had become more than just a place of work. It had become a place of learning, growth, and connection. She felt a deep sense of purpose and fulfillment, and she knew that the bond she had formed with Daniel would endure beyond the challenges they had faced together. As she packed her supplies to leave that evening, Daniel walked her to her car once more. "See you tomorrow?" he asked. "I'll be back," Sarah replied with a smile. "And Daisy will be in good hands until then." They exchanged a final nod, a quiet understanding passing between them. The ranch, the animals, and their shared experiences had brought them together in a way that neither could have anticipated. Driving away, Sarah reflected on the journey of the past few days. The mountain lion had been a test, Daisy's injury, a challenge, and the long nights of watch and care had been exhausting. But they had learned, grown, and formed a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. Back at the ranch, Daniel watched the car disappear into the distance. He felt a sense of peace and satisfaction. The animals were safe. The fences were secure. And the lessons of the past days had strengthened his understanding of teamwork, patience, and trust. As the sun set over the Brooks Ranch, the land was calm, the animals rested, and a quiet bond had been forged between a young veterinarian and a seasoned rancher, a bond that would endure, grow, and shape the days to come. For Daisy, for the ranch, and for themselves, they had faced fear, worked together, and come through stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever. And in that quiet winter evening, they both understood that true care, trust, and partnership could overcome any challenge.